All right, so let's talk a little bit about our authentication options in 802.11. First off, what we're going to talk about is open authentication. So I'm going to write up open at the top here so we can keep that in mind when we're looking at this. Now, what is first in the open authentication process? Well, first off, we have our client, right? And it's going to try and connect to an access point. Basically, is anyone out there? Now that signal, that RF packet, goes in both directions. It goes towards access point A and access point B. And it's saying, basically, hi, can I connect to your network? It's basically what it's trying to do using an RF packet. It's to authenticate itself to those access points. Now the access points receive this and are going to send a response back. They're going to send a probe response. Now the client evaluates the access points responses and picks the closest one or the best signal. In this case, that would be signal A. You know, when you try and connect, you choose what you're going to connect to, right? That's basically what we're looking at here. We are going to choose the access point. Let's say we choose access point A. This is the one that is closest to us. Now the client sends an authentication request. Basically says, can I access your network? The access point then confirms the authentication and registers the client to the cell in which it belongs. It says, okay, you are now a part of this process. You can join our network. So we go from client sends probe request, both directions. Remember, just looking for anyone. Access points send the probe response saying, okay, here is our information. Then we evaluate and choose our access point. Once the access point is set, the client sends authentication requests. This is who I am. Can I have access to your network? The access point then responds with a confirmation of authentication and registers the client to the cell in which it belongs. Very important. So now we are registered within this A cell. Client sends an association request to the selected access point, and then the access point itself confirms the association and registers the client within the cell. It's given a number, let's say XXX1. So now this client is a part of that cell. It is registered and ready to go. At this point, we can begin sharing data. Now with this open authentication process, there is no encryption whatsoever. So this is a completely open process. None of this information was encrypted, and none of the information we send subsequently will be encrypted. So this is a bad idea, right? But I have to give this to you as an option of wireless. We would want to implement anything at this point. WEP, even though deprecated, would be better than what we have here. Obviously, I would ask you to implement something modern like WPA2 or even WPA with TKIP or WPA2 with AES. Anything, any type of encryption we could add on top of this is the way to go. This is completely open traffic moving back and forth at this point. Okay, so let's take a look at this process. First off, we have the authentication request. Very, very similar to our open process. But what we're going to do when we add in the shared key authentication is we're adding in the challenge and responses, the challenge phrases and the challenge response. So what happens is we send out that authentication request. In our last slide, we saw that once we send out that authentication request, we got a response, right? Immediately we got a response. An authentication response. We're not going to get that here. With a shared key in a WEP infrastructure, what we're going to send out next is the AP is going to send out a challenge phrase. This challenge phrase is basically challenging the client. We need a key. Do you have the key? Then using the key. Well, that's a horrible looking key, but that's what that is. That's a key. Using the key, we're going to encrypt a response to the AP. And the AP, using the key it has, will send in the authentication response. And from that point forward, everything will be using the keyed authentication. Now the problem with WEP is it's not a very strong key, right? So it's easily crackable. Also, WEP uses the same key. It is static, nothing changes. So if I capture enough of these requests, enough of these responses, enough data going back and forth, eventually I will be able to isolate the key data and reverse engineer it. That's why WEP is not very strong at all. But this is the WEP process, and I want you to pay attention here. It's very important to understand that. We did not have this challenge and encrypted response at all in our open authentication, did we? But on our WEP shared key authentication, we do have encryption. And while this is better than nothing, this is not advisable to use in the modern day. Now, some of the reasons we don't allow this in modern day, like I said, it's easily cracked by hackers. Because it is a static key infrastructure, like I said, we're using the same key, very easy to break down what it's using. Also, this is client only, isn't it? If I have a rogue AP that I create, let's draw that, a rogue AP, I can then send out challenge phrases, can't I? By simply monitoring this. So not very well put together at all. Also, this does not scale well for large organizations. This WEP shared key infrastructure, not a great idea. We have better solutions out there.